All right. Traci, we are here today with an amazing guest. Um, I want you to introduce our guest this morning.
So we're with Andre Pennington. He is a masterful human being. I had the pleasure of meeting him probably about a month ago.
Oh,
Our
gosh.
conversation could have went all day. He is a wealth of knowledge and one of those people that is an example to anyone with neurodivergence of the abilities that we all have within us and how you can create anything you want in this world. So, Andre, I would love it if you would share a little bit about yourself, what you do, and how you got to where you are right now.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me on. Man, what do I do? I own a law firm, an investment firm, an insurance company, and a tax company, among some other companies. Um, what I think I do is I blend all of those worlds into one discipline,
Mm.
and then I layer in my journey as a human into that process. So my goal is to become someone that other people can be around and they just get better. Um, and that's actually the goal, right? So everything I create, I try and create forward facing that's ever expanding. And what my real hope and desire is that the qualities that God blessed me with, and I'm trying to be a good steward of that energy, of those instructions, so that we're imprinting positive on the world forevermore. And I'm just like that little spark, right? And then we'll have massive leaders that follow after me that could take the baton from where I carried it and move it forward to where it needs to go.
Just need to correct you. I need to
Oh, God,
correct you on that,
okay.
though. Your
No.
spark is not little.
Oh,
It's
my gosh.
massive.
Oh,
Like
my gosh.
I felt it in our conversation
Oh.
before. I came home and I was calling Julie and I was
I
like,
contain my
dude,
answers.
he's epic. Like you have
Thank you.
a serious gift of connectivity with massive amounts of people. And that means what? You're like the 1%. You are the leader. You are the change maker. And I absolutely adore that.
Okay, wait. I want us to focus on a few things that he said. One of them was how, I don't know if it's more of like what he said, but like the description of it. He channels, he's able to channel. I feel like with neurodivergence, if we don't have the resources or tools to manage our inner selves, our honing in is going to be everywhere.
It's chaos.
It makes me
For sure.
think of like the analogy of a flashlight. So you're gonna have a flashlight, the settings, right? The different settings that you have. You can have the setting of a flashlight be far spread, but the light can be bright, but it's so dim. It's not as it's just a lot dimmer. The light doesn't go as far. But then you change the setting of a light and then it just hones in. It's bright, not a lot of darkness can go through it. It just shines through straight and that light goes farther. That is what I personally think in my journey. When you're managing your mind, your spirit, your vessel, all of those good things, and now you're trying to channel it into one thing, right? Andre was talking about energies and providing and his gifts. Like one, we talk about awareness. So Andre was able to like become aware of like his being and then decided to make change.
Isn't the one word you used was discipline? And I have found that that is the key. With a neurodivergent brain, if you don't create disciplined structures, you will be living in chaos.
Yeah.
And you
Chaos.
literally have to choose and then start practicing
Yeah.
and do it until it overrides your old wiring.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you will stay in that chaotic state.
How would you describe that? How would you describe literally changing the neurons in your mind to think a completely different thought? Like that is a muscle, that is a feeling. People do not want to even dive into that because it feels uncomfortable. Like how would you describe that?
Or
for
maybe
our
even
listeners?
share an example where you actually execute it that way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I have so many because I started very early, right? And then it led to a new spot, and then it led to a new spot. But the one I'm thinking of that I made the most amount of effort, that I don't actually share that often, is I made it as a really strong trial attorney, right? I was known for doing trial work, and I was unhappy, which I just was like, that's interesting because I've been doing this for 10 years. And I really was the type of attorney that could win any case.
Oh, I love
Doesn't
that.
mean I won every single one, but the unwinnable ones, I could win them at times. So, but I was unhappy. And then I had a life event happen where I came home and I was literally by myself, right? And I had made some poor decisions. But it didn't warrant the response in that moment for what I had done. But I had a history of some poor decisions. And my first thought, my very first thought that I caught, and I thought it was interesting, was we should just go out and go to the bar. And I thought about it and I was like, that is not going to help this situation at all. And I don't know what it was, but it was very powerful for me because I didn't know what else to do. And that's the moment where I decided, like, I'm going to start working on myself, because whatever that thought is, I identified it as a malfunction of the brain or a dysfunctional thought. And I said, whatever that thought is, I'm willing to travel that path all the way until it changes. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
So
Okay. In my mind, I think of it as like kneading the dough. Is that what you're saying? Like when you're rolling a dough out, like it's thick, right? And then
Right.
it gets thinner, and then like it gets smoothed out and it's leveled. Is that what you're explaining it as?
yeah, kind of, right? Like I started having this awareness, and I do think it was a direct result of all the work I put in
Okay. Yeah.
to get this goal,
Mm.
right? Like at that time, it was very ego driven, very me centric. I want to be the best attorney that walks into any room, and I want to win for me. The client was almost even secondary.
Mm.
That is what I started learning. Like my brain is functioning differently, right? And like you said, the chaos was everywhere. Like the focus, the lack thereof. Like I remember I was in court, and I remember staring at something. I was creating a whole story off of it, like an entire story
I get it.
off of like one little thing that didn't matter. And then I'm like, came to, and I'm like, oh yeah, I'm in court doing trial stuff. But my point is that moment was so.
I can still relate to that.
Well, I mean, that's what my mind will do if I
Oh,
don't
so, I
center
get
it, right? So in that moment, I figured, okay, I have awareness of what my mind is doing.
Mm. Yes.
So I started traveling. I mean, I did everything. I went to therapy. I went to 12-step programs. I went to group therapy. Then after I felt like I was good, I had no more tools in my tool belt that I knew how to use.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started feeling suicidal,
Been there too.
right? Because
Totally
I
get it.
didn't know I feel this pain and I don't have what's the word I'm looking
Like
for?
a release.
Yeah, I don't have a release
Or a
anymore.
way to move out of it.
Yes.
Right, I don't have a way to all the self-destructive things that I'd been doing up to that point weren't options anymore. And that scared me.
Yeah.
So then I went to inpatient treatment for 30 days to figure it out. That's the back work that nobody talks about, that nobody thinks about. And I started learning how I am and who I am and how my brain functions and understanding it and accepting it.
Can I ask you a question?
Mm-hmm.
So would you say you felt all those things because of things you picked up along the way throughout your lifetime? Because often with ADHD, especially the time when I grew up, I was constantly told so many negative things about myself because I daydreamed. I talked a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I literally like just went off on my own way all the time, and it caused a lot of issue.
Yeah.
But there's so much beauty in that, but I didn't know that. I just felt small and less than, and so I carried that in to my adulthood. And until I realized I didn't have to believe what other people said to me or about me, that was my choice. And I actually understood choice at this point in my life because I never understood that before. Like, how do you choose not to be depressed? How do you choose not to be all these things? And when you actually realize that you do get to choose that and it comes into this healthy space, So, like, was that something you carried into your space? And when you started doing the self-awareness, where you found the magic to shift things into the space you're into now?
I mean, the way I grew up was very similar, right? So I was told a lot of messages about myself, like the way you look, people don't like you. You're a lesser part of society. Um, the stories we tell ourselves about being poor and what that means when you're around people who are not. All of those things, right? And then I had some family messages that I'm the black sheep, I'm less than, right? So it was hearing that track, which the little snippet, the reason I bring that story, this is a dysfunctional thought that led that track was leading to the dysfunctional thought, right? And it was driving my actions. So the way I could calm my brain is hyper focus on something. But I think it's those somethings that matter.
Oh my gosh.
Right? So at the time I was hyper focused on myself and being what I want to be. I want to go from being nothing to being the best attorney on the planet. Right? And I tried my cases that way too. Like my office would come and watch my trials. Right? And that all fed into it. Right? I was the deputy director for the Air Force's trial advocacy program worldwide, right? As a very, very junior officer, and it fed into it. And then I started realizing, like, I'm not happy. And why would putting a substance into my body in a painful moment solve this? And that's when I became willing to change. So it's driven by all the history and the things I was using to cope with it, right? And then it's just changing the track inside. I don't know if you said it on this, but you said reframing, right? I call that just telling myself a different story about myself.
It's exactly that. Yep.
Yeah.
Right? So I just started, I'm like, okay, what's the story you're going to tell yourself? I'm going to be the one in my family to figure it out and break this dysfunctional history, right? I'm going to be the one in the world who makes a positive impact for a lot of people. I'm going to have the courage to follow what I believe is my greatness all the way to the end, no matter what, right? And it's the no matter what portion that makes it work, because at each moment when I get hung up, I'm willing to figure it out, right? Because like it's not always easy. I have been diagnosed with several different things, and it all came in adulthood. I would say 31. But prior to that, I was not raised in a situation where you go see doctors, you go see. So all of it came at once. But here's the bigger part of it. That's not the story I tell myself about me, right? I have a very powerful mindset, right? And if honed in, like, it can do incredible things, right? So like when I went to law school, I didn't realize, like, I kind of felt bad at the time, like, I don't understand what you're saying because I can't focus on it long enough.
I totally get that.
To my mind won't translate it all the way through to understanding.
Yes.
Right?
It's a good way to say it. My mind doesn't translate fully. That's exactly what happens.
So we talked
Like,
about
I have
this
to keep
when
going
we first
over and
met
over and over,
about
and then it just like clicks. I'm like, oh yeah.
the school thing. But I think it's when you start to realize how your brain works, because you shared this with me and you tapped into that and you excelled because you didn't do it the way everyone said you had to do it. You did it the way that you knew worked for you.
Yeah, no, that's exactly it. So I started figuring out, like, I'm not going to take no for an answer. That's where the no matter what comes in, right? I'm going to figure this out no matter what. If it takes me 20 hours to do what it takes another person 1 hour to do, so be it. But here's what I didn't anticipate with that. Once I get it, I am free. Everybody, in my opinion, this is what I see.
I think you need to say that again, because I think for listeners, this is actually extremely important, because that's the key to
There's another
getting
thing I
a
wanna say to that,
reward
yes.
where you can just keep going and keep creating.
Yeah.
Well, the way I interpret, what I said was, once I get it, I'm free.
Right.
Like, there's no chains, there's no barriers.
Right.
What I look at and what I've interpreted is I'm not saying everyone, but this is how I interpret it. They get it in the box that it came through, So they get a box, and then they feel like they've got to hold on to the box, because I actually learned it my way, which was free flowing and the way I want to do it.
I totally.
When the gift comes to me, I can do whatever the heck I want with it.
Yeah.
It's
need to
super
listen-
powerful.
You need to listen. You need to read the book, The Dream Giver.
The Dream Giver?
It's
Okay.
my favorite book, and you're speaking to a lot of that. We are just so grateful, Andre. Our whole purpose of this episode is to highlight to our neurodivergent community that when you have the understanding of yourself and you're able to hone it in and you're able to make change within yourself. I know these are very vague things, but you're able to hear through with Andre that through his stories, he's able to do that. So we wanted to bring Andre here to be that example for our community, because guys, he's the example for me. I look at someone that has the same mind as me, and they can go and be a serial entrepreneur, make the change of their life and change their family line. Like, oh my gosh, I can do that. If you can do that, I can do that. And so I'm so grateful that you seriously came here today. What is one last thing or advice that you would give to our listeners that you would like to share? One last message.
That's tough, right? This moment. What's the one last thing I would want to say? God's put a seed in you, 100%. He doesn't choose different people and say, no, you don't get anything. No, you don't get anything. Sometimes, like with me, that seed was packaged deeper in the dirt, and it took a little bit more time to get to the top. But just be willing to explore that. Like, understand you have a gift, and be willing to let that gift come out of you, right? And with enough time and with enough effort, you'll be doing things that you couldn't have imagined.
I agree 100%. Love that.
Yes. Well, Andre, thank you so much.
Thank you.
That is all.